So next up, as you scale with purpose, how do you stay true to your roots? And what are the secrets of doing well by doing good? So let's welcome Shân Millie, who is the founder of Bright Blue Hare, for this very discussion.
So we have 4 great panelists here today with varying experiences around scaling and purpose, and whether those two things can actually live together. And you're going to find out some more about that. We have 25 minutes, so I'm not going to hang around, panelists. Okay, let's kick off by setting a bit of context for the people who don't know you, but also for the people who do. You as individual leaders, but also as representatives of the companies that you're representing here today. So, this session's theme, as you know, defines scaling with purpose as what staying true to your roots actually means. So let's kick off by getting you to share with us what those roots are. And I'm really interested, not just in the roots for your business, but also roots for you as individuals as well. So first up then, Nick, social impact in your first career, and now part of the PayPal, well, leading the PayPal Giving Fund. So your personal roots and the business's roots?
Yes, my role before PayPal was helping people who run charities and trying to encourage them in their roles and support them in doing a better job. And I moved into eBay originally, which was as part of a very tiny charity, 2 people in a broom cupboard. Everyone had to stand up when we were
literally
going in and out of the
broom cupboard.
Pretty much literally a broom cupboard. And raising a couple of £100,000 a year. And now we're part of PayPal and using that scale to raise close to $1 billion a year now for around 140,000 charities in 30 countries. So it's been operating at a much larger scale while still trying to stay true to that original purpose of making it easier to run a charity and bring in resources.
And just briefly, you mentioned this previously in one of our conversations, the roots for the trust and the roots for the parent organization. How are they related at that point, just as a scene-setting context before we dig into that a bit further?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, PayPal has always been a big processor of donations to charities, around about $20 billion a year. And the idea behind really bringing our organization across as part of the divorce settlement with eBay a few years ago was that we could use the assets that we have, whether that's all the fun vetting and compliance work we have to do with charities, or all the payment processing infrastructure we have, to really do some good by helping not just process transactions, but also raise some money for charities ourselves.
Thanks very much. Sharon, your roots and your business's roots, just to set the scene for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So my roots are in change, whether it's in big corporates, mainly financial services, but in the sort of last 10 years it's been in the wonderful world of FinTech. But if I think about OakNorth's roots, a little story about our founders, Rishi and Joel. Many years ago, they started their own data analytics company, cobbling it together, trying to look for some funding, and they needed £100,000 to cover the staff wages, etc. They went to pretty much every bank they could find in the UK, nothing. They'd remortgaged their houses, the rest of it. So they were running dry. They then went to the US and visited multiple banks again and came back with $10 million. And there's something broken there. Something isn't quite right. They went on to build that business to over 4,000 employees, 11 countries, and sold it for a considerable amount of money to Moody's. But when they did that, they realized, well, there was still something broken from their previous experience, and they saw the opportunity there, and it coincided with the increase in competitiveness and access to open banks in the UK and the regulations to set up banks. So they literally turned around the day after they sold their business and said, let's build a bank. But they were very, very focused, and this is part of our absolute DNA of OakNorth, focused on the needs of entrepreneurs. So we call them the kind of this missing middle, the entrepreneurs who are looking for that funding to scale up, And over the years, we have do deals between 250,000 up to several millions. And now we've written over 10 billion in debt finance for different companies. Thousands of homes, thousands of jobs come off the back of that. But that is absolutely the single route of the business going now and in this as we scale for the future.
Yeah, the site talks about being founded on frustrations, which I think says it all, really, doesn't it, Sharon?
Yeah, thankfully they're not as frustrated now, but we're hoping to solve others' frustrations.
Let's find out, perhaps, in the next question as well. So, Nithish, your roots and your business's roots.
Good afternoon, everyone. Personally, it's showing empathy, compassion, respect. I think that's paramount. From a business standpoint, the company WNS that I work for, we're basically a backbone for a lot of businesses, right? So we work to design the operating model, which is basically a cusp of bringing data, strategies, digital, and operating design to the table. And that's quite critical for us. What we've seen, especially in the FinTech world, is in a lot of companies with great ideas raise Series A, B, C, D, E funding. They kind of scale up quickly, but they get to a point where the growth becomes non-linear for them when it comes to operating expense. And we basically sit at the cusp of that to basically bring the toolkit to the table and fix the operating design. So to us, it's basically allowing them to have a non-linear growth, but at the same time managing the backbone of their operating design.
Okay, and we might want to dig into a little bit around what non-linear growth actually looks like in the second question as well. But the roots of the parent company of WNS, Nithish, I think you started out as the captive for BA, didn't you?
Yes, we were BA, started company 1996, went public in 2006.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Really interesting that your roots are actually self-insuring against risk for BA, right? I find that interesting. But other people may not, but I do. John, your personal roots and the roots of your business, please.
Yeah, of course. So personally, for me, I come from people-led professional services. So people are our biggest asset, and our customers are people. So I've always believed that if you invest in your people, you treat your people right, you manage your people through change that the business is going through as you scale and grow, then you're going to be successful. Happy people equals happy customers. And there was some talk earlier about employee satisfaction surveys and things like this. Now, they are really, really important, but one of the things to remember is they will give you quantitative data. You need qualitative data, and you only get that by going out and talking to your staff members. So you have to match that quantitative data with the qualitative data. In terms of BKL, we've always been really, really focused on community. That's both internally, how we work together across disciplines, across teams to provide better service for clients.
So from a roots perspective, all those years ago when there were 30 people,
yeah,
John, that it was about...
It was about looking after each other. So people, really. So creating a strong internal community, but also understanding your presence in the wider community.
Even at the beginning, John, at the beginning of the journey for you?
Even at the beginning of the journey. I mean, one of the things I always remember is BKL always encouraged, this is when I joined when I was 19 years old, so a long time ago, they always encouraged you to do charitable activities, and they would double any donations that you raised, so you could really kind of double the impact that you were having, and I just thought that was a really nice thing. And I can explain a bit later how, as we've grown, that has changed.
Correct. Thank you so much. So, okay, a little bit of context on the roots then. I'm always interested in the individuals leading firms as well as the firms. You all know that. But okay, so we've heard also some really interesting stats about just how much scaling you're either doing, have done, or helping others to do. A really great mixture of experience here. So I guess the question really is, or one of the questions is, with this exam question that we've been given, how flexible is purpose? Is it something that you start out with and you change? You could. Do those roots that you start out with, actually, do they have a shelf life? Do they become something different? Do the first set of roots die off? Or does it turn into something else? I mean, what's your view on that, Sharon?
So I think there are certain things that do have a shelf life, and there are certain things that don't. I think certainly for our bank, in OakNorth, the roots are, as I've explained them, literally helping the entrepreneurs of this world. And hopefully if the world does not run out of entrepreneurs, we won't run out of a purpose to keep going. But I think there is another part, which is our values as well as a bank. We have a bunch of values, but they kind of get summarized up in as a one team, and how we deal with challenges. And it's not to say we don't flex the way we do things, or flex the way we put out product lines, or the way we go to market, or target things, or structure products. That's us listening to our entrepreneurial customers, giving us new ideas and giving us new challenges to face. But it's ultimately still got the same purpose, because if we are entrepreneurs ourselves and we want to support that industry of growth across the country and across the globe, then our purpose does not change.
But is there a right or a wrong way to do it according to your founding purposes as OakNorth? I mean, I'm thinking of one of the other phrases that stuck with me on the website, which is staying curious and questioning everything. Questioning everything when you're scaling. I mean, is that even sane?
Well, I think it's the roots of why you're doing something can be solid and stay true, but the way you get there totally have to be curious. And we have a saying about zero basing absolutely everything, which in itself is difficult, because you've figured out a way to do something, and we've been super successful, top 1% commercial banks, and you think, well, but that works. And it's like, well, yes, but we need to zero base it next time we do it. Start afresh. What is the
COO, Sharon? I mean, you're not telling me that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies. Zero basing everything every time.
It is probably one of you're going to ask me later some of the personal challenges, and I think that is a difficult thing to do, walking into a room and saying, don't want to hear from the people who've done this for the last 10 years. I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from somebody completely different. How would you do this? Forget what you do today. Because that's the only way you actually genuinely challenge yourself.
Okay, there's so many other questions I'm going to ask you, but actually there's loads of questions I want to ask John as well. So, yeah. So that roots having a shelf life, or changing, or should having to change in ways that maybe you think are great, and maybe aren't quite so great according to what brought you into the company in the first place?
Yeah, this question really got me thinking, actually. I've been back and forth on it a lot, because I was originally like, no, the roots are the roots, and you don't change the roots. But actually then I started about thinking about BKL and the growth phase that I've seen it go through, and the one we're about to embark on. So when I joined, we were about 30, 40 people. We're now 250 plus, all still in the same location. So we're now one of the biggest employers in the local community. So from what we used to do in terms of charity and supporting local charitable activities, we've now been able to set up a foundation where we donate a percentage of profits to that foundation every year, and they support really good causes within the local area. So we've been able to do much, much more. So it's just being conscious of how things move on. But if I take where we're going now, so we were looking for something that we could really benchmark ourselves against. So we became a B Corporation last year, which is really, really good for a couple of reasons. One, it's a third party, and they're kind of scoring you and giving you some accreditation rights, so that's always nice.
Yeah, because it's not an easy thing getting B Corp certification, is it?
No, it's not. We actually put it in our 2021 strategy that we get it in 2026, and we got it in 2022 after 1 year.
Well, so you've made it look easy then, John, right?
Yes, but it's not easy. We've done a lot of work in the background before. We actually got an impact business model award in how we deal with our people, so, you know, my area of passion, so that was really good. But the other thing about B Corp, which we think is great, is it keeps, you're expected to move forward constantly. So it's not a tick box, you're done, stop. It's no, next year you've got to be better, and you've got to be better the year after that. So what that's meant is we're actually building these types of discussions and conversations into various areas of the business, and even decision-making at board level. And it's kind of holding us to account, right? So
as part of that, saying what do we need to change about ourselves in order to keep that forward momentum towards and bettering B Corp? Is that what you're saying? Your roots are kind of being changed deliberately and purposefully now?
I think they're evolving. So someone that joins the business now, we're doing initiatives like we're looking at how our impact on the environment. How can we make ourselves carbon neutral? What are we doing with our supply chain? We want to look at water usage, but we realise we don't have a water meter, so we're kind of looking at that. But one of the good things we're trying to do, or one of the key things I think people should do, is co-creation. So we're looking at setting up sort of shadow boards, in effect, that are able to feed into the main board, suggest things, have discussion, have dialogue, and it's involving our people in that journey. So someone who joins now might have their roots in environmental issues and how we can improve our impact on the environment. So I think it's evolving to something where it's just let's balance profit with purpose as a more general statement, but it can mean different things for different people because they'll have joined the business at different stages of the business's journey.
That is really interesting, actually. I mean, it's all very interesting, but also in the context of this event that we're speaking at today, which is basically saying, you know, FinTech, and people have said it on the stage, when all that mattered was how quickly you're going to grow and with what metrics attached to that, to actually what's our role in the for good. So Nithish, you get to see lots and lots of businesses, right, going through various stages, and you actually help them to scale as well. So that question around, you know, do you have a view on when you're looking at your business, the businesses in your portfolio, okay, you had this purpose, you had these routes to start off with, time you chopped them off now and grew some new ones, or don't lose those, because if you do, what kinds of views do you have on that? What have you seen?
Sure. So I think the purpose doesn't change. The purpose remains exactly the same. I think my colleagues, my friends have said this as well. You know, if there's a FinTech which is, for example, into payments, it will continue to do that. It may just expand its footprint. If there's a FinTech in cross-currency, it's going to focus on that. If there's a FinTech in lending, it's going to do that. If there's a FinTech in wealth or asset, it's going to do that. I think that doesn't change, right? That's the DNA of what they've started to do. What probably changes is the way they get there. And probably, I think Sharon mentioned that as well, that the journey may change. For example, pick any FinTech that started, say, 5 or 7 years back, right? Pick 100 FinTechs. And you look at them now, and you will probably find a mix of build or buy or borrow strategies, right? Some of them have decided to go down the build route. They will continue to do that, invest in products, you know, invest in technology, do that from A to Z, right? Some would buy, and most of them are banks. They would buy that because they don't want to kind of invest 10 years or 5 years in getting there, right? And vice versa. Some would partner, right? So they would find a nice partnership on, you know, where and how and when, or whether it'll be exclusive, non-exclusive, whatever that might be, to get there. And we've seen a combination of all these three whilst we're working with, you know, companies. At the end of the day, as I said, we are the backbone for a lot of these businesses. What we do for them is to build the operating infrastructure with a combination of, you know, technology, a combination of AI, a combination of data. But the roots may change, the purpose doesn't change, to your question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, when you're building that backbone, does it matter to you at all, really? Do you feel it's part of your job to help them decide whether that's the right backbone or the wrong the right backbone, because what you do will always be good. Obviously, I know you're going to say that, Nithish. But does it matter? Does it come into it what they're actually going to use that backbone to do?
Well, I think in 80% of the cases, it does matter to us, simply because some of these journeys are not, you know, short-term journeys. They are, you know, 2, 3, 5-year journeys, and we are engaged with them as a part of that long journey. So if they take a detour, it does matter to us on how we kind of tend to support them. But I mean, we advise them to an extent where we stay relevant to how the operating design is going to shape.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. Nick.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and certainly I would say the way in which you apply the purpose and the way that the values grow up around that does evolve as you scale. The organization was more or less a startup when I joined, and we were excited about moving very quickly, changing things, changing direction. If there was a quicker way to achieve the purpose in 3 months rather than 6 months. And years later, if you're called in for a chat with the head of compliance, you know, you're acting like the head of a startup is no longer a compliment, right? So you do have to become more of a systems thinker about how to get there. And we try to create space to think about, you know, how we can achieve the purpose at the next order of magnitude, you know, when we're 10 times bigger than we are today. And we've done that 4 times, rather than thinking, how can we get through the year in a slightly stronger position? So that time scale and the complexity of thinking required does change, but the direction, I think, stays the same.
And I guess the core competencies there required to map out what that next scale of impact will be. That's a different set of skills as well, isn't it?
Exactly. It's how can we achieve these things within this organization and with these people, with the assets that we have, rather than what's the shiniest object that we can chase fastest. So yeah, the culture and the approach does evolve.
Okay, thanks very much. So FinTech's having a leadership position on scaling with and for purpose. John, I want to ask you, what do you think that looks like? First of all, is it possible? And then what does it look like for you?
Yes. So yes is the short answer. But the long answer is fintechs and financial services, I guess, in general, have the ability to impact a really, really large number of people. So they can assist people, or a large number of people, in making an active decision. And when we get lots and lots of people actively making positive decisions, that's when we're going to see huge change. On the other side of that, I guess, if you don't do it, what's it going to cost you? And I believe that the way that we're heading, we're seeing a couple of trends in the market, is that if you don't concentrate on these things, it's going to really, really damage your brand, both with your customers, but also with your employees and future employees. They really care about purpose. So if you don't have one, it's going to be a problem for you in terms of attracting and retaining staff. And just kind of in the industry, what we're seeing is we're starting to see a lot of investors. So it could be, VC firms, private equity firms. They're asking these questions. Where's our money going to go? Is it going to go into something that's got a purpose attached to it?
So for you, it's yes, you should, because it's a business plan, right?
Well, yes, you should, because you must. Otherwise, you probably won't have a business plan in 5 years.
Okay.
Is probably where I sit with it. That's the trend as I see it.
Thank you. Nithish, what does FinTech's leading on scaling with purpose look like for you and WNS?
I think we have to all bear in mind that we've just had Silicon Valley Bank incident less than 12 months back. I think, to your point, the one big challenge that the industry faces is how are they going to, especially the FinTech, is how are they going to make money, right? They've all invested significant amount of capital from private equity and other sources. And at some point in 5 to 7 years, they have to show that money back. They have to show that money back to the investors, and that's how they really get valued or go to IPO, whatever that might be. The industry is at that point right now, in my view, right? We've finished that 5 or 7 years of initial journey, and we are at a point where the hundreds of fintechs which have raised private equity money have to now at some point find a way to give that money back to the investors. I think Silicon Valley Bank, as I said, is an event that's happened which was because it was only invested in the tech space. And there are a lot of outcomes of what that means to the industry, right? So I think to your point, I think whilst the purpose is being defined, it's time for them to kind of stop and think of how they're going to give back the money to the industry and investors.
Okay, so keep your promises to your investors is how you can lead on scaling with purpose for you, Nithish, right? Okay. Sharon?
So I think, FinTech is one of the most exciting industry sectors. That's kind of why we're all here in Innovate Finance hosting. I think, though, that to Nitish's point, it's about, for us in particular, scaling in the right way. There have been many, many cases that we all probably know about where valuations are inflated and super inflated. So what is it that drives that valuation of a business? And some of those are coming to fruition now, not necessarily always in a good way, which has been always very important for OakNorth to be profitable from the very beginning. The very beginning, we started off doing things in the way that we could be profitable and continuing to do so. But in terms of FinTech leading the charge on this, I think we have the benefit of being newer. We don't have huge legacies. We don't have the scale. So we can be nimble and agile and creative. And being agile and creative, we should be the ones coming up with the ideas that set the bar. So I think that's important as a FinTech world, informing the wider financial services industries of how it can be done and how it can be done so much better. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Nick?
Yes, fintechs have a unique opportunity and are uniquely positioned, at the nexus of people's assets and resources, but also the ability of technology to help them make connections and do purposeful things with their money. So I think it's a great opportunity, but also along with that, we have constantly a trade-off, between being responsible and trustworthy and making sure that we treat customers with great care and that they understand everything, against the desire to move quickly, to experiment, to put new things in front of them and see if we can grow parts of the business really quickly. And how do you manage that trade-off between speed and technology and treating customers carefully and thoughtfully? It comes back to trying to stay focused on the purpose and the roots and what we're ultimately trying to achieve.
So is that a yes or a no to FinTech can lead then, Nick? What do you think?
Yes, it definitely can lead, and it needs to do so carefully.
Okay, so we actually don't have a functioning clock that I can see up here at the moment. So I do have another question. Right, and it's a brief one. I can't see you from there. Sorry, darling. Did I do this on purpose so I couldn't see you? I wonder. So yeah, it's in a word or a very brief sentence. Yes, thank you very much, Nick. What's the most important thing you've learned in your personal journey so far, Nithish?
I think personal journey, okay, treat the other person the way you like to be treated. I think it kind of holds for personal, for business, whatever that might be.
How do you like to be treated, Nithish?
Sorry?
How do you like to be treated?
Respectfully.
Brilliant. Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. Okay. Same question to you, Sharon.
I think it's been mentioned a few times through other panels. I think it's being authentic. And whether that can feel like a bit like brutal honesty at times, which can be a little bit hard to hear, it's much better than politics, hidden agendas, and all the rest of that BS, quite frankly.
Love it. And my colleagues at Innovate Finance will be astonished to know that it wasn't me that used the BS word first. It was you, Sharon. Thank you. That's lovely.
Acronym version, not...
Yeah, no, and that's the difference, I think. Nick.
Yeah, picks up on my last comment, really, being very optimistic about the scale and potential impact of what you can achieve and looking for the opportunities to change course and deliver that.
Is that what's got you through so far, is it?
That, and also being pretty pessimistic about what can go wrong and the consequences of it going wrong. So it's that, again, that balance.
Okay, thank you. And John?
I mean, those were really great things. So I think, can I just layer on top that sometimes it's important to look backwards so you can see how far you've come on that journey.
So very quickly then, just in a word, it's a bit unfair because you're not expecting this, okay? And I'm going to start with you, John. Don't look so worried. So far, how optimistic are you that you're going to be able to stick with your personal purpose and remain a core part of your scaling firm?
Oh, yeah, being very, and yes.
Very optimistic.
Very optimistic.
Nithish?
100%, yeah.
Sharon?
100%.
Sorry?
100%.
100%. Nick?
Yeah, I think the values still fit, so yes,
Okay.
It works.
So what's that? 100. Okay. Wow. Look at this. Amazing. So thank you very much. Please join me in thanking your panel. And obviously they'll be around at the tea break, so I'm sure you'll want to grab hold of them and learn some more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.